Hi, welcome back to another episode of Nobody's Doing It Right, the podcast for those who are uncertain. My name is Kat, I am your host. For today's episode, we're going to talk about, and I'm going to probably rant a bit about, how the struggling artist trope is ruining our lives, our creativity, and I'll preface this by saying I don't think this just applies to artists or art or creation. I think this also applies to just living. And living is a form of artistry in itself. So I want to talk about how, even throughout my own journey, right? It's something I'm really having to come to terms with right now, realizing how much I've held myself back because of the struggling artist trope. And obviously, I'm not saying anything new or revolutionary. People have talked about this for forever, right? This idea that in order to be a proper artist, you have to be struggling. It has to be difficult. And I want to talk about it not necessarily from the perspective of financial struggle, even though that's a really big component to all of this, right? People feel like in order for you to be a valid artist, you have to struggle financially. I don't think that's necessarily true, but that's not really the perspective I want to take on this. I want to focus it on a different perspective that I don't see talked about a lot. I want to talk about how, for a lot of my life, as somebody who I consider myself a writer, writing is my passion. It's what I really enjoy doing. It's what's helped me understand myself and the world better. You know, all the content I make pretty much has stemmed from me writing in some way, usually in my journal, but I write fiction as well. I used to write more fiction back in the day, not so much now, but writing has been a big thing for me, and it's been something that I've kind of tied my identity to, which might be a good thing and a bad thing at times. But one thing that actually really made me very uncomfortable and insecure about pursuing my art, or at least taking myself seriously as a writer, is that I often was inundated with images or ideas or conversations about how, specifically for writers now, I'm talking specifically about writers right now, that writing is the hardest thing to do. It's so difficult. It's so painful. If it's not difficult when you write, then you're not writing well. Or everything you write, you end up scrapping it and starting from the beginning, and no line is ever perfect, or the lines that you love the most are the lines that you end up having to get rid of. That really sat in my mind for a long time and made it very difficult for me to show up, to write, and to share my writing. Because I often felt like, okay, based on this narrative, this discourse that I'm seeing everywhere, no matter what I write, if it's enjoyable to me, it's not worthy. It's not worthwhile. And that has, I think, had a huge implication on how I see myself, how I see my value, my worth as a writer. And I'm sure other people struggle with this as well, right? This idea that you as you are, you as you create, you as you put your writing out, like however your writing is organically as it comes out of you, is not good enough as it is. You have to be toiling and working on it and, rewriting all the time for it to be a good piece of writing. Now, obviously, every skill takes time and effort and energy and relearning and mastery, of course, right? Like, of course, I'm not saying that you don't ever have to practice that and get better at it, totally. But there is a specific narrative around writing that seems a bit over the top, in my opinion. I'm going to be honest. It seems a bit over the top. And I do sometimes question if it's because many of us who are writers or artists in general, but again, I'm focusing a little bit more on writing right now, but I will generalize it later on in this episode. I do wonder if it's because many of us as writers have been told that writing is an easy thing in the sense, right? It's kind of been diminished as a valuable skill or trait or art to do in this life compared to other jobs, right? And I wonder if maybe there's a bit of overcompensation on the writer's part, this collective mentality around how we have to overcompensate for feeling like what we're doing is trivial and silly or childish. And you know what? I was raised with that mentality too, right? That art or writing is childish. It's not adult. It's not whatever. And I've had to really unlearn a lot of that. But when I hear this narrative of you have to struggle, it has to be very difficult, it has to be painful all the time to get the words out of you, I do question, is this a form of overcompensation? Is this almost a self-victimization of the artist to feel like their work is more worthy? And then that's made me question, why do we feel in general even, not even about art specifically now, but in general, why do we feel like we are more worthy when we struggle, when things are difficult? Why do we feel like if life was effortless or fun or enjoyable, if it flowed out of us, why do we feel like that's not worthy enough or good enough or valid enough? Why do we feel like we have to toil away at things to deserve time on this planet? It's something that I've had to really think about and battle. I have had to grapple with this a lot throughout my life. And my experience as a writer has made me look at it from a different perspective. My experience as somebody who just, documents my life and talks about my life and talks to other people about this stuff. Like, I look at it from a different perspective with that regard. But I do often feel like this narrative around artists and struggle makes it very difficult to just show up, which is the only thing that you need to do as an artist. The main thing that you need to do as an artist is to show up. But if you feel overwhelmed with this burden of, okay, my writing has to be very, very difficult for it to be worthwhile. So if I am enjoying the writing I do, or if I can get up every day and do it and it's fun and, and I'm not having to write and rewrite and edit and re-edit and whatever, then it's not worthy of being put out into the world. So I'm just not going to do it. I'm not going to do it even, let alone putting it out. And that's something that I struggled with a lot. I held back on actually creating because I was like, well, it doesn't matter because it's not going to be, first of all, I'm forcing myself to make it not fun anymore because as every artist or writer says out there, again, I want to specify that it is writers that I see a lot of this. And I'm obviously not all writers by any means, but I've seen it a lot where I've noticed like, okay, this is a common theme. But if writers say, it has to be painful, it has to be very difficult, it has to be this all the time, why would I want to do it if I have to make it that difficult and painful for myself? It's the equivalent of saying, okay, I want to start a fitness routine, but the fitness routine I have to start means I have to do all these weights and I have to run for this long and I have to do this. You're not going to do that fitness routine. It's going to be too difficult and too overwhelming to even step on the treadmill or to even pick up a weight or whatever you want to do. Why do we do that to ourselves? So I realized with my own creative work, I held myself back from doing my writing and focusing on my writing because I had this deep subconscious belief that it's not good enough if it's not difficult for me. But if it's very difficult for me to do, if I have to make it difficult for me, I'm not going to want to do it. So I was kind of stuck in this limbo. I've broken out of it now. I'm sharing a lot more of my writing over on Substack and on Instagram. Instagram actually transformed my mentality a bit more because putting it out there, putting little bits of my writing out there for people to read and, just putting it out, just sharing it has really made me feel a little bit more confident because people like it. It resonates with people, even if it's not perfect. And I think that perfectionism trap is also a big component to this as well. But as I talk about this all the time, but when I started TikTok, I did it as a way to get eyes on my writing. But the irony was that at the time, I still felt insecure about my writing. And because TikTok was not what I first aspired to do, I didn't want to be a TikToker or a video creator, the stakes were much lower. I gave myself permission to do TikTok in a messy way, in an imperfect way, because I knew already, I went into it knowing that I'm not going to be good at it because this isn't really what I want to do, or it's not really what I think I'm good at. I didn't think I was good at public speaking in any way. So I gave myself permission to do it badly, to go in and be messy and be imperfect. And it ended up being really good and having a lot of impact. But my writing was a different story because of those narratives that I often heard around writing and how it has to be painful and difficult. And if it's easy or fun, then you're not doing it right. And it's like, why do I have to be miserable doing art that I enjoy and still having impact, right? Creating impact with that work. The two can coexist. Like, it can be fun. It can be enjoyable. Of course, it will take work, obviously, and you will improve naturally, though. I also feel like there's this mentality that the growth and improvement only happens through force. And sometimes, yeah, you do have to push yourself, of course, but this narrative is saying that the only way to write well or to be really good is to force this growth, right? But growth happens naturally. The more you do something, naturally you adapt and you grow and you improve. But if you don't do it at all because maybe you're overwhelmed by the idea of it being very, very difficult, like it has to be really difficult for it to be valid, if you don't even just start doing it and do it over and over again, you're not going to improve at all. You can't force it. It happens organically and naturally for you because everybody's style is different. Again, this applies to other aspects of life too. It doesn't have to just be with regards to writing or art, right? Anything you do in life, the more you do it, the more you just show up, naturally you will get better. This was also what happened with my videos. I went into it knowing I'm not going to be good at it. I'm going to suck. I don't think I'm very articulate in videos. And when I look back at my old videos from like early 2022, I was so much more reserved in the way I spoke. I was quieter, I was slower, and then I changed throughout the years because I got more comfortable. I allowed myself to explore a little bit more of my tone of voice and the way I articulate things. And now I'm different. Now I feel like I'm better. I feel like I've improved a lot more and it feels more authentic to me. That wouldn't have happened if I held myself back and said, no, me creating this video has to be it has to be painful. It has to be very difficult. It has to I have to really make sure I'm saying the right thing at the right time. Like I would have never made a video if that was the case, and I wouldn't have improved my public speaking abilities. The same thing applies to writing, and that idea of struggling, it has to be difficult and painful, is holding so many of us back. It is forcing us to feel like what we do naturally, organically, what flows out of us is not good enough. And that in itself creates a lot of self-worth issues in all aspects of our lives. So if you are an artist, if you are a writer, I think it's very beneficial for you to start just putting your work out there. Do it quickly, not quickly, take your time and however much time you need to take. What I mean is don't put pressure on yourself to take longer than you think you need to, or to put more effort into it and force things to happen than feels organic for you. Just do it and share it. Do it and share it. That's it. It could be almost mechanical at times. And I don't want to say that you have to remove all the magic around your creativity. Not at all. I still think for me, when I sit down to write, even though I do it more regularly now, it is kind of it's a spiritual experience. It really is. I get into flow state every single time. And I genuinely enjoy it. But I don't force myself to make it such a huge task. I don't force myself to make it difficult or painful or have this pressure of it being perfect. I do it. And then when I've done it and I felt that catharsis, I felt that release, I put it out into the world. I let other people experience it and witness it. Because through doing that, I'm letting people witness me in my imperfection, in my worth, regardless of how much struggle and toil has gone into it. But yeah, I think if you are an artist, doing this can help you in other ways in your life too. Or if you're not an artist, whatever it is for you that you feel, oh, it has to be difficult for me to do this, so I can't do it unless I'm really struggling. Whatever that is for you, do exactly what I said when it comes to art and putting your work out there. Do it in a way that's the simplest way you can think of, that's still enjoyable for you, because it should still be enjoyable, right? That's the point. But pleasure is the point of life. Why do we deny that of ourselves, right? It's so silly when we think about it, but it has to be fun for you and enjoyable. Create it, put it out there, and then watch yourself improve over time. Watch yourself grow. Watch yourself learn more about yourself throughout the process and what you like, what you don't like. Again, this applies to anything in life, really. But yeah, I hope this was helpful. I hope it was informative. I really wanted to share this because it's just something that's been on my mind a lot lately as I now kind of ramp up my writing and focus a little bit more on it in the way that I've always wanted to, but always felt scared to do. If you want to talk about this in more detail with me, you can book a one-to-one call. You can read my Substack if you want. And you can follow my TikTok and Instagram if you're interested in seeing my other content. But other than that, thank you for listening, and I'll be back again soon with another episode.